All right, with all of that said, let's go ahead and move on. We are going to round out the 1960s with our Best Picture movie series, as we'll get to Midnight Cowboy here in just a little bit.
Hmm.
And then we'll take a pause on this movie series for a little while, and we'll come back to it at another time as we'll tackle another decade. So I do look forward to
Oof,
getting into
gonna be
Midnight
fun.
Cowboy. Before we do, though, as we talked about before we got into our Sinners conversation, the summer movie season is upon us.
Yeah.
And so we are going to do a summer movie preview here, and talk about some movies that are coming out this summer that we're really excited for, and perhaps some films that you may want to get on your radar if they're not already. I do
Hmm.
want to start here, and this isn't like these aren't hidden gems by any stretch of the imagination. I want to start big. I want to go big
Oh,
as
you're gonna
far as
start
the
big.
summer
Okay,
movie
this
season.
this is this is not a JD thing to do. So I'm curious
No,
where you're going
we're
with
gonna go
this.
big here, and the reason I want to go big here is because, and for those that listened to last week's show, Brendan and I got into this a little bit at the very end, at the very very end of the show. But I want to
Okay.
bring it up here again in case you didn't listen to last week's show. I want to bring this up because there's been a bit of a switcheroo as far as my anticipation goes, and
Oh,
it
I
sounds
know where you're
like
going with
yours
this.
as well,
Okay.
Brendan.
Yeah, I know you're going with
When
this.
we did our yearly preview back in January, there were two Marvel movies on our radar. One of them I was very excited for, and the other I thought was going to be another Suicide Squad. I was really looking forward to Fantastic Four. I thought that one had great potential. At that time, we hadn't seen any trailers, we hadn't seen any marketing, but simply what we knew about the project. And we talked about how there was a lot at stake for the Fantastic Four. All we really
Hmm.
knew about that film, aside from the cast, we got the logo last year and we got a glimpse at the score from Michael J. Kino.
Right.
So a lot to look forward to. Thunderbolts, on the other hand, now I've been looking forward to Thunderbolts personally for a couple of years now because I think it's a fun storyline in the comics,
Sure.
and they have set up all of these characters in all of these various movies. But generally, that was a film that was dismissed for the longest time, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt a need to somewhat champion it because it was being dismissed. I thought there was potential, but at the same time, I didn't think that the film was going to amount to anything great. Where Fantastic Four was looking promising at that time. Now,
Yeah.
fast forward a few months, where we've gotten so much more marketing for both films, really. And while I still am hopeful for Fantastic Four, my goodness, my excitement level for Thunderbolts has skyrocketed.
I think there has been a bit of a reversal here.
Yeah.
I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you on this one. Um, Thunderbolts, I had very little expectation for, and I've had very little expectation for most Marvel movies for the past maybe year or year and a half or so.
Uh huh.
I will say, with regard to Fantastic Four specifically, I don't think it was necessarily anticipation for that movie. It was more so a recognition that if there's one movie Marvel needs to be successful, it's that one. Like, that's the one
Yeah.
that's almost obligated to be a good movie and a successful one. And I
Yeah.
still stand by, given where it seems like Marvel's going, that is the movie that still needs to be their biggest hit, whether it be critically or not, but at least box office wise and given the audience response, that needs to be their biggest movie. I feel like it really does.
Mhm.
But man, the hype around Thunderbolts has surprisingly increased to the point that maybe a reversal has kind of happened. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm someone that wasn't fully sold on all of the marketing for Thunderbolts. Like, that A24 themed trailer was whatever. It was kind of funny. Like, I kind of saw it
Yeah.
as more a joke than anything
Yeah, it
else.
was humorous. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
don't
was
think it
humorous.
was taking itself all that seriously.
No, no, for sure, and I kind of respect that. Um, but man, some of the latest pieces of marketing they've released, the movie looks like a movie. Like, it actually looks
Mhm.
like a movie. It looks well shot. It looks well made. It looks tangible. It looks choreographed. It looks put together, which I can't say about most of their movies over the past 2 years or so.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. That's kind of awesome to see.
Yeah, and I think the irony to that even is that back in February we also got Captain America Brave New World,
Mhm.
and there was some discourse around that film going back to the phase 2 formula. And I think it's fair to say it didn't
It
really
didn't. It
a
didn't.
little bit.
I didn't hate that movie as much as most people did. I was very mixed
Yeah.
on it, but it is a movie that felt like it was held together by Scotch tape.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I don't think it all the way had the phase 2 aesthetic and
No,
feel to it.
no.
I do appreciate that again. We've moved away from the cosmic and it was more grounded.
Mhm.
And perhaps you could say phase 1, phase 2 with how it's essentially a sequel
That's
to The Incredible
I mean,
Hulk.
it's kind of a high level way of throwing it back to phase 2, but
Yeah.
the
So
pacing of it all and the way it feels constructed feels very phase 5 in a way as
yeah,
well.
I agree. I agree. Like there is somewhat of I use this term very loosely, but very loosely, but
Mhm.
kind of again, it's a little bit more grounded. We're not we've
Sure,
moved
yeah.
away from the cosmic and the multiverse, right? It's everything on Earth. I do appreciate that about the film, especially given that we're exploring a new Captain America and what that means. But aesthetically, in terms of its broadness, very much phase 5. I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah.
I don't think it all the way got there. Thunderbolts, on the other hand, I don't think that's a film that is trying to go for a phase 2 aesthetic necessarily, but man, my goodness, that it is a film that feels like a movie
Yeah.
in a way that I don't know if we've had since phase 2 almost a decade ago, which is really exciting. Now, there's of
Yeah.
course going to be larger MCU elements at play that will revert against that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the marketing has done a great job of hiding that and just making the movie feel like a like a more brooding version of Suicide Squad or Guardians of the Galaxy. And there's certainly going to be
Yeah.
a similar dynamic at play, but tonally, it does seem to be in the end. It looks like it's going to be quite the departure from Guardians,
Well, that's
which
yeah.
I am excited for.
It looks like they're marketing a movie and not a Marvel movie, which is a big
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah.
And in the case of Fantastic Four, which I will say, just given the marketing we've seen so far for that film, it certainly looks more cinematic than most of what we've gotten in Phase 5 and even most of Phase 4.
Yeah.
But it looks like we're still getting mostly a Marvel movie with that one as opposed to a movie. Not necessarily a bad thing, but I just didn't really expect to have these types of expectations for Thunderbolts, which I thought was just going to be yet
Mhm.
another throwaway thing for them. I felt like that was going to be something that they just felt obligated to complete because they announced it so long ago. But
Yeah.
it actually feels like a tangible effort. Like it actually feels
Mhm.
like a cinematic treat. And maybe Fantastic Four will also be that as well. And I'm hopeful that it is. But I'm surprised that of the two, the one I have the most faith in feeling more cinematic is actually Thunderbolts, which I did not expect to.
Yeah. I mean, I still have a lot of hope and excitement for Fantastic Four. I love the 60s aesthetic and vibe that it has.
I like the
And
retro vibe. Yeah.
tonally, I do think the films will be very similar with how dire things get. And I do
Hmm.
love that juxtaposition in the Fantastic Four trailer. That film is going to end on a massive disaster, and it's going to break everyone's hearts. And I look forward to that. And we'll discuss whether that's
Yeah.
effective or not
Yeah.
once we get to July. But what's exciting about Thunderbolts is that it had a lot of work to do to get to where it is now in terms of at least my personal anticipation for it.
And it
because
did the
it
job.
was,
It did the job.
yeah, it very much did the job. Again, from a broad perspective, I feel like I've been looking forward to the film in some time, but I was like my expectations were still kind of low as far as
I
overall
was
quality
yeah.
goes.
It was more of a
And
curiosity for me.
yeah,
And then it became something I was actually kind of
yeah,
excited about, which I did not
yeah.
expect.
Yeah. So I'm very much looking forward to Thunder. Like in the end, by the time we get to the end of July and we had seen both films, like I think we're gonna live in a world where Thunderbolts is the better of all the three movies that come out this year. And I would not have said that back in January.
Oh, I'm fully anticipating Thunderbolts is going to be better of the three. I
Yeah.
really do. I really
Yeah.
and that's not to say that I think Fantastic Four: First Steps will be a bad movie. I have a hunch, regardless of where I fall on that film, it's going to be better than most, if not all, of what we got in Phase 5, minus Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
I feel like these two are going to be in a different stratosphere when compared to the rapid content creation that we've been getting from Marvel.
Hmm.
Uh, as if to suggest that Marvel is finally recognizing the faults in this strategy and are going to tone things back a bit, which we might start to see as we get to the conclusion of both Doomsday and Secret Wars. That maybe this is all about taking things back a little bit,
Yeah.
recalibrating. I feel like all of these final movies in phases 5 and 6 are going to be all about recalibration. I
Yeah.
think that's going to be the theme here.
And if those two movies land, Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four,
Mm-hmm.
it would do the MCU an incredible favor.
Yeah.
Because just a few months ago, we were sitting here going, how on earth is Avengers Doomsday going to bring back that large MCU excitement that you got with Endgame, given that everyone seems to be pretty lukewarm at best on Phase 4? There's been no buildup really to Doomsday. There is a lot riding on these two movies, especially
Yeah.
since Captain America that came out didn't really move the needle all that much. And
Yeah.
now the marketing for these two films have gotten people excited. The Doomsday casting was a massive success, as we talked about some weeks ago. If these two films land overnight, the reputation of the MCU could reshift once again. There's a lot riding on these two
I hope
movies.
so.
And
I just hope they make
they
movies
look good.
again. And it sounds like they're trying to keep
Yeah.
things a bit more self-contained once again, which is, I think,
Yeah.
what they need. They need to kind of go in the opposite direction that they've been
Yeah.
focusing on, which has been, epic world building and epic
Yeah.
expansion. Maybe that's not the way to go anymore. I think
Yeah.
you've reached a breaking point, Marvel, and they're recognizing that.
It's going to be exciting. I'm going to be real curious. Thunderbolts comes out this coming weekend. In fact, by the time this episode is released, there is a great chance that you are listening to this as I'm in the theater watching Thunderbolts. So hopefully
right. Yeah,
it's
you're
good.
getting to see it
Hopefully I'm
early.
having the time of my life.
Are you bringing your son with you on that one?
I don't think so. Schedule wise, I don't think it's going to work out. So I
Okay.
think I'm going to unfortunately have to see that by myself.
Okay.
But we will of course get the Thunderbolts very, very soon. Fantastic Four: First Steps comes out July 25th. Where do you want to go from there?
That is a great question,
Where should we
JD.
go?
Where do we want to go from here? Do we want to keep talking big,
We
or
could.
we could?
Yeah,
I
get some
I
of the
guess
big
I
ones
have
out
to
of the
be.
way.
Well, I guess I have to be a bit upfront because there are a lot of big movies coming out here in the summer, and the majority of them I wouldn't say I'm all that excited about.
Mhm.
I think
Okay.
I have a lot of curiosity about a lot of these movies, but I wouldn't say I'm all that excited about a lot of these. I do want to get one out of the way because a lot of people might be listening to me say that for long time listeners of the show and thinking, how the heck am I not excited about Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning?
Yeah.
And the reason why is because um I was completely fooled by Dead Reckoning, which I did not
Yeah.
care for at all. Like, that's the only
Uh,
Mission Impossible film I actively don't like. And because this is a direct tie to that previous film, I'm very concerned about where this one's going to go. I think it
Mhm.
looks better than that previous film, but there's a lot coming out this summer that I think should be building more hype in someone like me. But I've been burned so many times by many of these other franchises or many of these other types of movies that I'm getting too concerned. I'm getting too cynical. And I bring up Mission Impossible as maybe the biggest example of why that is. And I really hope I'm fooled. I really hope that I'm proven wrong. Uh, I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like the precedent that Dead Reckoning set, for me at least, is not boding well for where this franchise is going to go and ultimately conclude if this is the end point. I'm worried. I'm really worried about this one.
I am curious. I don't know if I'm worried, but I'm certainly curious. And
Mhm.
I am with you to reiterate for anyone listening that did not hear our review of Dead Reckoning last year. My thoughts on that film, if I'm going to be kind, are incomplete at this point. There are
Mhm.
aspects to Dead Reckoning I like. There are aspects to it that I am very much baffled by. But we are only halfway through the story. The final reckoning is clearly a part two, and it very much could answer the questions that I have as a result of Dead Reckoning. So I don't
Yeah.
want to sit here and say this is my stamp of approval on the film because I don't really have any conclusive thoughts on Dead Reckoning yet. Now, by the time we get to the final reckoning, even if that film comes out, it's great. I really love it. It it still might not answer all of the questions I have on Dead Reckoning. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be something that we revisit once the film comes out.
Yeah.
But at this point, Dead Reckoning did leave me very much mixed. Very much mixed. So I am waiting for the final reckoning, and maybe that is the word that I can use to describe it. I'm sitting here waiting.
I am
I'm
too.
not I'm
I'm
not I'm
just so
not
worried.
worried. It actually looks
Oh yeah,
great. It looks
visually it
much
looks
better.
better. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't look like a cartoon like that first
Yeah.
movie did.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think visually it is much more in line with the rest of the series. Tom Cruise doing Tom Cruise things. It looks really great on that front as well. I
Mhm.
just have a lot of questions regarding the story, the film's use of artificial intelligence.
Mhm.
Where does that go? Because where things left off in Dead Reckoning, I did find it honestly incredibly vacuous. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to fully judge anything until we get to Final Reckoning
Yeah.
because
That's fair. That's fair.
the ending of a film can oftentimes recontextualize how you feel
Especially yeah,
about what
yeah.
came beforehand.
Especially, I mean, this was intended as a part 1 and part 2 situation. It kind of got morphed to not be that anymore, but it doesn't change the fact that Dead Reckoning is very much a prelude to what we're getting here.
Yeah.
They are very much intertwined, and that
Yeah.
is very
Yeah.
much gonna be the point. So, yeah, you're right, there is a lot that could happen in the final reckoning that shifts our perspective of Dead Reckoning. I'm only worried. I actually gave Dead Reckoning a revisit not too long ago, and I liked it a lot less on a rewatch.
Okay. I haven't revisited Dead Reckoning quite yet. I've been going through them, and I have a few more weeks before I get to
It's an
the Final
awesome
Reckoning.
franchise. It's an
I am
awesome
through
franchise
it.
nonetheless, though.
It's a great franchise.
Yeah.
I've revisited the first three already, so I will probably get to Dead Reckoning here in the next week or so, and we'll see if anything changes. I don't know because so many questions or criticisms I have of that film, it just leads
They're
to that.
dangling. They're all dangling
Yes,
there.
it
Yeah.
just leads to that path of uncertainty, inconclusiveness. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I want to wait. I want to wait. I am going to revisit Dead Reckoning, obviously, so it's fresh on my mind going into final, but we'll see. As it states right now, even on Letterboxd, they don't have a ranking for it. It feels disingenuous for me personally to do so. Because I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah. That's fair. It is my least favorite film in the franchise very easily, but I am willing to acknowledge that that could change depending on where the final
Yeah.
reckoning goes. Like I just know it's my least favorite at this point.
Yeah.
It may not stay there though.
Yeah. And that's totally fair. And I may end up being with you once we see Final Reckoning,
Yeah.
because there's a lot about the film I don't love currently as it stands. And as I just noted, I've already revisited the first three. Mission Impossible 2, I am coming around on that film the more and more that I see it. I think there's
That
a lot
movie
to
is
appreciate.
again, maybe something will happen in the final reckoning that helps bring that movie back into the franchise more conclusively, I'll simply say, but that is clearly the narrative outlier in the franchise. Like it's the one movie in the franchise I feel like you can skip and actually get a better consistent story of where Ethan Hunt's journey leads you to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is the movie that helped redefine the stunts of where this movie was going. Like
Oh,
in a
yeah, yeah.
way, Mission
I
Impossible
love it.
2,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of like that movie if I'm being perfectly
Oh, I do
honest.
too. I've really come around on it. It's been a few years since I've seen it, and I've never been the biggest fan of it, but I am starting to come around on it more. And it's even beyond the stunts of it all, and I know that gets a lot of play on social media.
Mhm.
Just how incredible that film is as an like it embraces
Oh yeah,
its
it
late
helped
90s
define,
early 2000s
but
aesthetic. You
it
know,
did help define the stunt design aspect of this franchise going forward. But
for
you're right,
sure.
it was every 11-year-old boy's favorite movie when it first came
Yeah.
out.
And I get that. Like there's a lot of John Woo isms in the film that get a lot of play on social media.
The Mission Impossible theme song was performed by Limp Bizkit. Like that just goes
Yeah,
to show the kind of movie that it is.
crazy. But on this rewatch, I think even beyond that, it's just the sexual tension between Tom Cruise and Thandie Newton that
Oh, it's good.
struck a
It's
chord with me.
good.
Like that's incredible. Which is why if I am going to criticize the film, it is such a striking outlier given the rest of this series, and especially where Mission Impossible 3 goes. And
Oh yeah.
that is my favorite of them. I did get a chance to revisit 3 as well. That freaking rules. No one could ever make me hate that film.
No,
I
no, no.
love it. I don't care how bad people talk about it. You can rank it last on your list all you want. I don't care. It is the best of them, and I will die on that hill.
I love that passion. I really do. I don't fully agree with you, but I do like Mission Impossible 3. Yet at the same time, it proves this point that Mission Impossible is one of those franchises that there's not really much of a consensus, right?
Yeah, you can go in any
I
direction.
kind of
Yeah.
love that. Like it's,
Yeah.
I mean, if maybe Fallout is the most commonly cited favorite of the bunch, but I don't even know if that's necessarily true. I feel like it is pretty varied based on how
Yeah.
people respond to this franchise.
And I love Fallout as well. That's probably my number 2.
Okay.
And look, again, going back to the point I was trying to make, I just find it incredibly jarring when you go from what is at the core, at the beating heart of Mission Impossible 2 between Cruise and Thandie Newton, to him being married at the beginning of 3 and zero context to explain any of
Well,
that, which
that's
is
why, yeah.
hilarious.
I've often said I think the Mission Impossible franchise has more consistent continuity if you completely take away Mission Impossible 2 and then rename Mission Impossible 3
Yeah.
to some other name. Like, I don't know, Mission Impossible the Anti-God or something like that, which is the
Yeah.
code they use for the Rabbit's Foot. So it actually has more of a
Yeah.
narrative continuity with the rest of the franchise. It does
Yeah.
smoothen out the entire franchise a bit more, but I still love the existence of Mission
Yeah.
Impossible 2.
Oh,
I wouldn't
same.
have it any other way.
Same. Like I really like it. I could just use my imagination, I guess, to make up that gap. It's just really funny. I say that very complimentary, don't get me wrong, but it is super jarring going from 2 to 3.
Yeah.
And but that is certainly the fun of the franchise. But I do like narratively, there's at least a little bit more consistency, especially once you get to Fallout. But that is to say, at this point, I probably prefer two to Dead Reckoning, but I can't say that conclusively. When we get to the final Reckoning and it answers the questions that I have, it may completely flip how I feel about Dead Reckoning, and who knows, maybe it'll end up in my top 3. I don't know.
We'll see.
I have to wait and see. I have to wait.
It comes out in less than a month as we're recording this.